Welcome. We are diving straight into a massive and honestly highly misunderstood challenge in modern business today. We're talking about the absolute, non-negotiable necessity of transitioning from legacy, heavily customized systems over to agile, global standards. If your organization is anywhere in the middle of a digital transformation, trying to migrate to the cloud, or trying to figure out how on earth to integrate artificial intelligence without breaking your entire infrastructure, the insights in this explainer are absolutely crucial for you. We're going to lay out the exact, practical roadmap for navigating this journey, because getting it wrong is incredibly expensive.
To put that cost into perspective, let's look at some eye-opening data from Forrester. $10.9 million. Let that sink in for a second. That is the amount a mid-sized firm, we're talking around 1,000 employees, loses annually in pure productivity. It equates to roughly 728 hours lost per employee every single year. You are essentially losing weeks and weeks of work per person. And why? Simply because the digital tools are too hard to use or they don't align with how people actually work. It's the friction that happens when a company drops millions on new software, but the workforce simply doesn't know how to use it or, frankly, just outright refuses to use it effectively.
So, how do we stop this massive financial drain? Well, the research maps this out across 6 distinct stages. We're going to cover the end of customization, the architectural shift to global standards, tackling the giant AI challenge, building out a socio-technical framework, leveraging digital adoption platforms, and finally, how to actually measure your success and prove the business value.
Let's start with stage 1, and we might as well just rip the Band-Aid off right now. The era of heavily customized, bespoke software systems is officially over. Full stop. For decades, the standard operating procedure in tech was what everyone called a lift and shift. You took your old, highly specific, quirky legacy processes, and you essentially wrestled the new software to the ground until it bent to your will. But in the age of rapid cloud computing, that model is entirely broken.
We're looking at a fundamental paradigm shift here. The old mentality was known as fit to gap. This meant you looked at where the new software didn't perfectly match your unique, homegrown process, and you wrote a bunch of custom code to fill that gap. What did that do? It created chaotic manual workarounds, massive amounts of technical debt, and it made future software upgrades a literal nightmare. To survive today, organizations have to mandate a fit-to-standard approach. This is the real core of modern transformation. When you buy software now, you do not rewrite its code to match your old habits. Instead, you do the really hard, messy human work of changing your internal business processes to match the software's pre-configured global best practices. You have to retire those old spreadsheets, abandon the legacy habits, and retrain your staff. It's the only way to get true global agility.
Moving on to the second stage, the actual shift to those global standards. Embracing this new fit-to-standard mandate requires a completely new foundational architecture for your enterprise. You can't just send out a polite memo asking people to use standard processes. You have to enforce it architecturally, so they literally do not have the option to revert to their old ways. This secret weapon for enforcing these global standards is a brilliant concept called the clean core. Now, a clean core architecture strictly prohibits direct customization of your main system. Think of it like building a house. You don't jackhammer your foundational concrete just because you want a new window. If a specific business unit absolutely needs some custom logic, say a unique local compliance rule for a branch in another country, you don't write it directly into the main system. Instead, you build it as a separate attachment. You externalize it to an integration layer. By keeping that core pristine and untouched, your entire organization can seamlessly adopt new cloud updates and innovations every single quarter, without suffering through those multi-year, painful upgrade cycles we all dread.
But getting the technology right is really only half the battle. Think about the human element. For years, process owners across different departments wore their unique, custom-built workflows like a badge of honor. It was their territory. They built it exactly how they liked it. The research points out a massive psychological shift that has to happen here. Leadership has to guide the workforce away from demanding ownership of those custom features, and instead empower them to take pride in a new role, the stewardship of global standards. It's about changing the narrative from "we are losing our special features" to "we are gaining the agility to innovate as a unified global team." Now, as if overhauling your architecture and human psychology wasn't enough, Stage 3 introduces an exciting yet incredibly disruptive new complication: the sudden, explosive emergence of conversational ERP and generative artificial intelligence. We are accelerating into a world where Gen AI assistants, think of tools like SAP Joule, are acting as the primary interface for our core business processes. Users can just type natural language prompts to kick off incredibly complex workflows. Sounds amazing, right? But here's the catch.
If your organization hasn't fully embraced standardized processes first, you hit a very dangerous wall called the governance AI gap. Without the right guardrails, frustrated users will start relying on unauthorized external AI tools. We call this shadow AI, and it leads to severe data leaks, or what developers affectionately term stochastic hallucinations, which is really just a fancy way of saying the AI confidently makes up fake numbers or processes because your underlying internal data is a customized mess. AI acts as a multiplier. If your processes are standardized, it multiplies efficiency. But if your processes are chaotic, AI will simply help you execute that chaos at lightning speed. So how do we prevent this AI-driven chaos? That brings us to stage 4, building a socio-technical framework. To make sure your transition to global standards actually sticks, you have to treat organizational change management as a hardcore technical capability. It cannot just be an HR afterthought or a couple of training videos. The solution involves merging a rigid technical deployment model directly with formal change management across 4 clear steps. First, the prepare phase, where you ruthlessly audit your workforce's actual AI readiness. Second, the explore phase. Instead of just handing down mandates from the executives, you actually sit users down to co-design conversational workflows, comparing what they want to the new standard. Third is the realize phase. Here, you train them, not on old-school static menus, but on prompt engineering and human-in-the-loop validation. And finally, deploy, where you continuously monitor the live system to catch any rogue processes before they spread.
The foundational research is crystal clear on this. Bringing the end users in early is absolutely everything. By having your employees actively help define how AI assistants handle specific business tasks, they instantly transition from being resistant users to co-creators of the new standard. This integration ensures that the human enablement side of the house happens perfectly in sync with the technical milestones. It's the only way to stop users from throwing up their hands in frustration and quietly reverting back to their legacy transactional methods.
All right, moving into stage 5. We have the strategy, we have the framework, but how do we physically bridge the gap between messy human behavior and these rigid technical standards across a massive, potentially global workforce? Obviously, you can't put an IT trainer behind every single employee's desk.
Well, the Forrester data paints a pretty stark picture. Only 17% of organizations are currently considered proficient in scaling their digital adoption. The vast majority of companies out there are stuck in the emergent or formative stages. That means they might have a few scattered training tools in place, but they're entirely siloed, there's zero central governance, and they completely fail to actually guide a user smoothly through a complex end-to-end workflow when it counts.
The answer to this scale problem is digital adoption platforms, or DApps. Think of a DApp as a highly intuitive GPS for your enterprise software. When you rent a car in a new city, you don't sit in the parking lot reading the owner's manual cover to cover, right? You just plug in the destination and follow the turn-by-turn directions. DApps sit directly on top of your standard applications and deliver exactly that, just-in-time, in-app contextual guidance. If an employee gets lost, the DApp literally highlights where to click based on their specific role and the current task. But it goes way beyond that. A mature DApp can automate the complex parts of workflows, it establishes those crucial guardrails for AI so your team doesn't accidentally leak proprietary data, and it feeds deep behavioral analytics back to management so you can see exactly where people are getting stuck.
Which brings us to our 6th and final stage, measuring success and actual business value. It's the oldest rule in business: you cannot manage what you do not measure. We've talked extensively about moving to standards, keeping a clean core, and deploying DApps. But when the CFO asks, how do we scientifically prove that this standardized adoption is actually working?
For leadership teams, this is the holy grail. We have to move way beyond simple vanity metrics like how many people logged in today. We use a breakthrough formula known as the effective adoption rate, or EAR. This metric calculates the true, holistic health of your socio-technical alignment. It acknowledges a fundamental reality. In a modern, AI-driven enterprise, success is an incredibly delicate balancing act between operating at breakneck speed and maintaining rigid compliance to your core standards.
The effective adoption rate is brilliant because it pulls together 3 specific dimensions. First, you have the intent resolution rate. Basically, how often are your people successfully using AI to get their jobs done quickly? Second, there's the process compliance index. Are they actually adhering to those global fit-to-standard models we work so hard to build? And third, the process drift coefficient. How often are employees sneaking off to use unauthorized shadow AI or those old manual Excel spreadsheets? When you look at these together, it proves a critical point. Even if you have a highly efficient AI assistant, it yields diminishing returns if process compliance drops and unauthorized manual workarounds spike. True, sustainable business value only happens when high AI efficiency meets high process compliance.
So, what does this all mean for you? The tools you need to enforce global standards and integrate AI safely are already here. We have the clean core architectures, we have the socio-technical frameworks, and we have advanced digital adoption platforms ready to guide the way. But as the research clearly shows, the technology is actually the easy part. The real challenge is the human one. The question you have to answer as you walk away from this explainer today is this: is your organization, from the very top of leadership all the way down to the front lines, truly ready to let go of its custom past and do the hard work of stewarding this new standard? Think about that as you plan your next move.